Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda, and this is all about my NPR challenge. If you don't know what this is, I will link a video up above that just tells you what the NPR challenge is and what is happening, like what I do for the challenge or whatever. This video is going to be about the 3 books that I'm reading right now for the dark side in the years 2016, 2017, and 2018. So, as I finish reading them, I'll just pop on my computer and discuss it. And once I've discussed all 3, I'll wrap it up and you'll see this video. So right now I'm starting Terror in the City of Champions. When I'm done, I'll be back to talk about it. Hopefully I can do this before the dogs bark too much. But I finished one of my NPR books, the one for 2016, which is called Terror in the City of Champions. It has a huge subtitle, which you can see over here. But anyway, this book was really good. At first, I decided that maybe I didn't like it very much, that it was kind of slow at the beginning. However, I realized that it was just taking a minute for me to get like all of the events and stuff straight in my head, because this book talks about, well, it says the City of Champions because this spans the 1930s in Detroit. And so in one year, their baseball team won the World Series, their football team won the Super Bowl, and their hockey team won the Stanley Cup. So like the whole city was the City of Champions. And also the boxer Joe Louis is from there. And at this time, just after that, he won the heavyweight championship. So lots of champions. However, in the middle of this, there was a secret society called the Black Legion. They started by patterning themselves. Patterning is a hard word. Patterning. That is a weird word to say. But they patterned themselves after the KKK in the South. And they were predominantly like anti-Black, but they were also anti-everything, including like anti-Catholic. This is super confusing. Not confusing. It's just weird to explain, but when they got new members, the way they got new members, first of all, the people who created it were down for everything. Like, they hated everything except white, Protestant, probably men, but not necessarily a man-woman thing. But then they started getting recruits. And I'm not saying that if you're part of this secret society that you're not culpable for the things that they did, because they did horrific things. However, the way they got new people is they would say like, hey, we're having this meeting at my church. And they did have a church. They even got a preacher to come to the church, and he thought that he was preaching for like a real church. And then when he got there, he realized that they were all members of this secret society, and he was like, oh. So they would invite somebody like that they work with, like, hey, come to this church meeting we're having. And then he would be like, okay. And he would show up there, and they would escort him down to the basement, put a gun to his head, and make him say this oath that just says pretty much that he'll do whatever they say. He won't tell anything that they do, and that he will never leave the Black Legion. And that's it. And then if you were like, what have I stumbled into the middle of? Like, this is crazy. You'd be like, okay, I'm not coming to any more of these meetings. Like, I just won't show up and then I won't be a part of it. No, they would come to your house and like forcibly remove you from your home. And if you were disobedient long enough, they would take you out in the woods and beat you as punishment, like to teach you a lesson or something, and then send you back to your house. Or if it was bad enough, they just straight up killed you. Like, they just killed you. And for sport, I shouldn't say they, because it wasn't all of them, but some of them for sport would just randomly ride around and try to find Black people to shoot or to hurt in some kind of way. And including, there's a story about this one guy who was going to go like on a camp out in the woods outside of Detroit. And there was like a shed or something out there. Not a shed, but they all had like a house. They had like some kind of cabin thing out in the woods, and they were going to go spend the weekend there. It was like 4 men or so and their wives and their children. And so they went out there, they put their kids to bed. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And they had told one of the other guys who was in the group, like, you have to find us a black man because we just want to shoot him tonight, or we want to hunt him or whatever. And so this guy that they tasked with this job didn't really want to do it. But instead of like going to somebody and asking for help, he went and found this guy who he actually owed money to. And the man that he owed money to, he said, hey, if you come ride in the car with me, I'm going to go see this guy who owes me some money. And then when he pays me, I'll pay you. And the guy was like, okay. So he got in the car with him and he drove him out there to the middle of nowhere and they all shot him. I mean, of course I know that these things happened and that they are real, but it still, to just hear the story, it's just blew me away. I was like, this is incredible. Like, it is just incredible to think that this happened and these horrible things just happened as just like normal, whatever. And then whenever the police got there to like they found a dead body and the police were like, well, who is this man? There's no identification on him. And then they were like, oh, no, wait, I think this is his name. And they were like, oh, well, he doesn't live around here. He doesn't have any family around here. I guess it's just an unsolved case of a dead black man. The end. So anyway, that is what is happening. And that is what this book is, not just about that. But like I said at the beginning, it was a little bit difficult because it jumped from like what was happening with the Black Legion to also at the same time what was going on with the different sports teams and the players on the teams. And a lot of it had to do with like Henry Ford and the auto industry in general. And so it kind of jumps around to all those topics. And for a minute, it was hard for me to keep up with at the beginning because it was doing a lot of jumping and until I got everything straight and everybody straight that we were talking about. And I just was blown away. Like, there would even be police officers and they would say to them like, hey, we're gonna have this meeting, we want you to come hang out. And he was like, okay. So then he would show up at this meeting and they would take him down into the basement and hold a gun to the policeman's head and make him take this oath. And so they had policemen in their group. They had city officials in their group. And it was like you didn't know who wanted to be in the group and who was just doing it to stay alive, like protect themselves. And so anyway, they eventually found out who they were. Like the main guy never served 1 day in prison. It just, the whole thing is ridiculous and probably indicative of how many things were in the 1930s and how probably things still are today. Anyway, this book was good. It was really hard to read in parts, and I think that you should give it a try. If you're looking for a nonfiction book it's not just fact. It had like stories in there, and I mean horrible stories sometimes, but still good book. Oh, I forgot to say, my next book is the one that I drew or like picked for 2017 on the dark side, and it is Universal Harvester by John Darnielle. So I am going to start reading that, and when I'm finished, I'll let you know what I thought about it. I finished Universal Harvester, and I think that I really like John Darnielle's books. Like, this is the second one. He also did Wolf in White Van. When I first saw this on my list, I thought, I know that name for some reason, but I didn't realize that it was because he wrote Wolf in White Van. So he also wrote Universal Harvester, and he does the audiobooks. He narrates the audiobooks, and he does such a good job. So I think that's rare to find a fiction writer. But anyway, I really liked it. It's weird, just like Wolf in White Van kind of took this concept that I feel like is a normal human concept, like growing older and figuring out who you are, like finding out who you are, and told it in a weird way, and also a specific experience that this guy had, and the story was kind of told in reverse leading back to the event. And so I really liked that in Wolf in White Van. And what he did in this one is he takes the concept of grief and abandonment, specifically of parents, and he twists it a little bit, and he looks at it just from a different way, and what the abandonment or the death of a parent does to the other parent, and how that trickles down to the kids. And I just think this whole concept is very cool, how he takes these things that everybody has to deal with in their life at some point, and he just tweaks it a little and looks at it like a little bit differently. So anyway, this guy, we start out with this guy who works at a video rental place in the 90s, and somebody comes and brings a movie back and says it has something weird in it, and he's like, okay. And so he just puts it on a shelf and forgets about it. And then a lady comes in and she's like, there's something weird on this movie. Like, have you noticed that? And he said, no. And so he gets the movie and he thinks, I guess I'll watch it eventually. And he just didn't. And so she comes back in and she's like, have you watched that weird thing on the movie yet? And he's like, no, but I'll take it home tonight. So he takes it home and he ends up watching it, and it's just disturbing to him. And so somebody has spliced something into the film. And that is all I'm going to say about it right now. But it does, like, ultimately we are in the current time, and other people have moved into a house and they find a box of movies. And we find out more about what happened to all the people that we're reading about at the beginning of the book. So I just really liked it. It was a really well done, I think. I'm going to go research and see what other books he has and put them on my list, because I just really like the way he writes. So that means that I have one book to finish for this month, and that's going to be Melmoth. I don't know what it's about. I still don't know anything about it, but I will be starting it in just a couple of days. So I will be back to report in after I read that and see what it's about. Well, I finished my last NPR book of the month, and it's called Melmoth. They say it a couple of different ways just because they say it in a couple of different accents in the audiobook. So I'm not really sure how you say it, but it is a person's name. And I didn't really like it, which is not normally what happens with these NPR books. Normally the NPR books are wonderful and I love them, but this one was pretty confusing in the way that it was told. We were in the past and in the present and in the past and in the present, and it was just weirdly told to me. I guess I couldn't ever wrap my head around who exactly everybody was and where they were, in what time frame they were in. And so in essence, what this is Melmoth the Wanderer, or Melmoth she has a lot of different names. And what she's supposed to be is someone all the way back in the time of Christ, when he was crucified, and then he appeared to some women. And this big group of women went back and told all these men, like, hey, we saw him. And the men were like, I don't know that I believe you because you're just a bunch of women. And this woman was like, yeah, no, they're making it all up. We didn't actually see him or whatever. I mean, at least I think that's what the story is, where she came from. And now she's like been cursed to wander the earth and find people who are being cowardly or who are not standing up for things. And so in part of this, we find it's almost also like, if you don't hear her name or hear her story, then she's not there. But as soon as you do, you start to see her different places, which was also weird to me as well. But we jump to different time frames. Like at one point, where I think this book, I don't even know when the actual like present is, but it is, I would guess it was in the 70s, 60s or 70s. and we go back in time with one character to somewhere around World War I, and with another character we go back to something to do with World War II, and they're just instances where they were cowardly, I guess, and so now they're being followed by Melmoth now in their current time frame. I don't know. It's confusing to me. And I mean, I guess ultimately it's a story about finding your bravery and standing up and being brave and not letting the cowardice continue to haunt you the rest of your life, I guess. Anyway, the NPR books, though, this month were really good, and overall, with the one exception. So I am excited about the ones that I get to read for next month, and I am just going to end it right there. That's all of my NPR books. If you've read any of these, let me know down below. I would love to chat about them. A couple of people have mentioned an NPR challenge, so if you're going to do your own NPR challenge, I would love to follow along and know what you're reading from there. And I guess that's it. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.